Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me for my class, Light, Law, Love, How the Power of Choice Works. Now, I could have called this class, exploring um, the nature of God, the power of God. I had 1,000 titles for this. This was one of those courses that drove me crazy in the creation because I could not quite target in language the the power that I want to share and explore and delve into with you in the coming weeks in each of these classes. That's how important, insignificant it is to me that it baffled me at every turn. Because was I talking about the power of choice? And I thought, no, that's not big enough because it it doesn't quite capture why the power of choice is so significant. Because therein, when we open that door, now we walk into the world of co-creation. Now we walk into this moment in time that we're living. But that wasn't even big enough because then, by the way, excuse me, but I am dealing with allergies. So you're just going to hear me do this. I know it's annoying and I'm going to try not to. But there we go. But then I as I realized, and this is coming from actually years of working on this body of material, because it's not just this class, it's a whole body of material, that it comes out of years of my understanding, shifting, experiencing, witnessing the what I would call the nature of the divine, shifting from the way that I grew up, which was in a very Catholic home with an off-planet God, with very typical religion, to watching through the years all of those stories, all of those mythologies evaporate and get replaced by the bio bio-spiritual ecology that is our nature, that is who we are, that is the essence of human consciousness, that is everything I began to learn about when I began to do medical intuitive readings. I never thought that years ago when that started, that in fact I was on the beginning of what was my, in fact, spiritual mystical path. But in fact, everything that I teach that I feel is of any value, any capacity I have to understand the greater cosmic drama, as little as I understand, as little as I can grasp, whatever it is I grasp that is of any value to anybody, is all the result of what began in doing readings, and how little by little, as the years passed, my understanding of how this physical world worked, how the cosmos worked with us, what the soul was about, and finally what we were about, became my theology. That became what I would describe today as my bio-spiritual-ecological theology. This, to me, is what I tell you is organic divinity. It's a bold thing to make a statement like, I think we really are on the cusp of organic divinity becoming the agreed upon myth, the agreed upon, no, it's more than a myth. It's the agreed upon understanding of how the cosmos works with us and within us. But as I teach this to you, as I break it down for you and with you, um, see if it doesn't make that kind of sense. See if it doesn't make that kind of sense to you. And what makes teaching really valuable for me is that it's valuable for you. And what makes that valuable is that you take each evening that we spend together, each class that we share together, and you apply it to something in your life. You see if this works, in other words. See if there's any power that we're talking about that I'm sharing with you that is actually authentic. So even before we get going here, I'm going to emphasize the power of choice repeatedly through our classes together, but I'm going to teach that through um, what a cosmic understanding of light, a cosmic understanding of laws, a different understanding of what love is, the power of words, the power of consciousness, the power, what is all the things we're going to go into. And I know from experience that there's never a day there's never a day that you don't make at least 30 choices, if not 100 million, right? Um, so you're never not making, you're breathing choice. You just breathe. We, even in our breath, all the little micro choices in us are constantly sparking off. Choice is how we participate in co-creation. That's exactly what it is. It's the mechanism through which we participate in co-creation. Just, it's our constant active life ingredient. Think about that. It's our constant active life ingredient. That's what choice is. That's why um, understanding right up front what this power is all about is so spectacular. So I want to hit a pause button, as I always do when I teach, and I want to set a larger framework, and that's um, I want to make us cognizant of the world we're living in, which for me makes it all the more important that you pay attention, that you really pay attention to why do I need to bother with the choices that I make? What does it matter? What does it matter what I do? What is that? And the way people measure their choices by the amount of stuff or the amount of noise or the amount of power versus understanding how to use the invisible choices that go from within you, that come from the decisions to manage your power of creation as a master. That really is the greatest powers of choice that you have. Now, um, this, I can't see my notes without this, so I'm sorry, I have to. Um, It is hard for me to even comprehend that the last time I taught a class, which was just with Robert, but the last time I taught my own class, the world wasn't at war, and all the things that have changed and are changing so rapidly that every single day, this world gives the presentation of being massively out of control. So I want you to hold on to that. Because you think, oh, good, she's going to upset us. No, I'm not. I'm going to lay things down like I want you to see things. If you've been a student of mine, you know that I always begin the lectures with um, the introducing um, um, the symbolic building And I have to do that again because I'm going to be referring to it constantly because it matters so much. And also going back to choice. So here we go. There's always these multiple parts. And if I was standing up drawing in a classroom like I was the other week, it makes it easier because then I can animate myself better. But I want you to picture a building, a 12-story building. And we're going to be referring to that building constantly. And really, this is the kind of jewel that I can give you that you actually can use the rest of your life. Because you are a building. You're just like a building. Once a building is built, it's there. It's not going anywhere. Once you're born with certain fundamental ingredients, nobody can change the fact that I was born in December or that I was born in Chicago or that, blah, 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 certain ingredients, or that I was born to Catholic parents. I mean, therefore I was going to be a Catholic. I mean, you can't change those things that come from Polish Austrian heritage. These are the ingredients in the first floor of the building. They're just basic physical life facts. That I was born in the United States. I can't change. I can't take the building and say, no, it was really built in Finland. No. I was really born in Finland. No. So on the first floor of the building, of everybody's building, is the world we agree upon, we share, we know, we realize. We understand about each other. It's the world of first level power. And choice works in a certain way at that level. At that level. It's the level at which you touch your choices. You touch it. See, I bought this desk and I got this teacup and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not imagining the teacup I want, which comes on a different floor. So this first floor of your building is where you take everything literally because you have touched things. So this is your five sensory world, and how choice works there is how you no, I want to say it differently. How you experience your choices on the first floor of your life is very different than how I want you to come to understand choice when, as we rise up each level of the building. Because as you, just like a building, if I took you in an elevator and we went up one floor at a time, the expansiveness of what you would see would increase with every floor. And pretty soon you'd see maybe the whole of Manhattan or the whole of the north side of Chicago. And it would be spectacular. But if you were on the first floor, you'd have to imagine Lakeshore Drive and Michigan Avenue or the George Washington Bridge and the Statue of Liberty, because you couldn't physically see it, and yet it's there. And yet it's there. But the parameters of depending, like getting to different floors in yourself. Once a building is built, once you are you, all the movement, just like in a building, is a movement that happens within you. You can go up the floors, and with every floor in yourself, you gain a vastly different, wider expanse view of your own reality. Not just your life, not just your life. Your first floor is your life. But as you ascend, you're pursuing your reality. That's a great big huge difference. Great big huge. And I'm gonna you need to understand this. When you're in the first floor of your life, the first floor, everything is tactile. You could touch it and this, that, so it feels, looks, tastes like life. But what every great teacher has tried to tell us, and what is so important to finally get, is that by the time it's physical, it's at the end of its life. It's already been created. The choices that made it come together have already been made. It's the caboose on a train and not the engine. It's the caboose. It's like showing up for dinner. Dinner's already been made. If you wanted to influence what I made for dinner, you'd have to reach me on a higher floor when I was imagining what I was going to cook for dinner. But by the time you show up to eat dinner, which is first floor, where's the food? It's right in front of you. What did you prepare? I prepared fish. Uh, by the time you sit to join me for dinner on the first floor of the building, it's too late to imagine, to make different choices, to consider, to put in all the possibilities that then become the probabilities, that then become what is created. What is created. Now, this becomes what we call our, physical based life. But as we ascend from one level of our lives, one level of our consciousness, to another, to another, to another, to another, and we look out the windows of our world, we see a wider and wider expanse that doesn't have a physical table with it. It has perceptual skills, inner perception versus outer perception. This is where we enter into the fluid level of our reality, our imagination, our emotional imagination, our intellectual imagination, our spiritual imagination, our mystical consciousness, our skills of light, our light anatomy, the anatomy of our larger body of life. Now, with each floor that we go up, our consciousness we don't go up by choice. We go up by choice and accompanying actions within us that elevate, that help us to progress in our consciousness. And with each greater floor, what I tell everyone is just like a condo building downtown or in the Upper East End in New York, or it's going to be more expensive. We always pay more to live high, right? And this is true within ourselves, that the more you pursue the heights within yourself, the more the outside world becomes you perceive it through a more fluid lens of reality, a more mystical lens, an understanding of what your power is supposed to be used for. What your power is supposed to be used for. So, one of the core classes we're going to examine is the difference between the love of power, which is a lower experience of life, and the power of love, which eventually is something we grow into, not personal love, but as we expand in our understanding of what these ingredients of life are all about, and why choice is so significant, and why every choice matters, that we understand this, then how and why we make the choices we do become something we have to really think about, because that's when we realize there's no such thing as a small choice. There's no such thing as an insignificant choice. There's just no such thing. Every single choice packs a punch, and it doesn't matter that we can't see it. And that's as we rise up in ourselves with every level of consciousness, what you're seeking to understand is more about the nature of instead of pursuing what's my life all about, there comes the time when you simply ask, what's life about? Never mind my life. I'd rather understand the whole of life as well as I can, as much as I can, as deeply as I can. And then I'll fit my life into it because this is the greater map. Life is not about me. It's not about me. My job, my task is to comprehend how life is constructed so that I can fit into it and serve the laws of life instead of thinking that life should serve me. That is a transformational choice. And that is when you go up a level, and through that lens, you begin to understand the life through the question of how 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 does life how do things happen? Why does war happen? Instead of looking at it like, oh, all those poor innocent horrible murderous that the thugs in there and the victims here and blah blah blah, you make the choice. I got to get to a higher perspective. I need a perspective that is transcendent of this moment. There's always been war. Why do we do this? And what's the way through this? And what's the way out of this? The greater the question, the greater the choice you make, the larger the choice, the more light filled choice you make, the more light you bring in. This is you you're pursuing the same thing is motivating you. You're witnessing war, but how you respond to it, how whether you're seeking an answer at the level of wisdom or the level of woe. Oh, those thugs in one country, those victims in another. Da, 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 da. That kind of thing. That's the choice to stay on the first floor at the battlefield. Does that choice heal anything? The same kind of thing I will teach you about yourself in your own life, in your own battlefields, when you're battling someone in your in your own life, the choices you make. Or you can decide, I've got to get off this floor. I've got to get off this floor. This is not helping me. I need a higher perspective that has that can expand my view, not just of myself, but I'll see them better too. At some point, the higher you go in yourself, the more you see everybody better, the more you're able to include the other person and their suffering and their anguish and their issues in the moment you're sharing together in this life. I'll tell you, I really did have the experience, by the way, of going to a building and experiencing this difference in height and vista. Most of my examples actually come from something I've actually lived or someone I actually met. Or but I was in New York and it was hot and it was August and it was and I think it's so wonderful when when you are in the thick of something that then becomes one of the greatest lessons, one of the greatest ahas, right? And it was a hot August day, in New York, they don't have a lot of alleys or any alleys, so the trash is often in the street and it's in front and it's fragrant. And the cab drivers are notorious for, hitting the horns. Nobody's going anywhere and they're hitting the horns and everybody's yelling and and I remember this day so well because I remember that my feet were so hot from the pavement because pavement gets hot and there's no way to cool it off in New York. And I was like, my God, am I hot? And I was going to visit a friend and she lived in the penthouse of this building. So I got in the building and I was particularly hot and particularly uncomfortable. And so I got up to her floor and she had this charming, charming apartment, condo, and it had a little balcony, not big, but little. And she had two chairs out and, little lights. And she brought out two iced teas. And honest to God, it was at that hour, it was around 6 o'clock in the evening. And and then that's such a beautiful time during the summer, and the sun's going down, but I was cooling off, having an iced tea, and I realized that if I lived on the first floor of that building, I would never, ever believe that at the very same address was this wonderful view of the Hudson River and everything else you could see. And then as we sat there in the night, in the evening, went down to dusk and the lights of the city started to come on and the beautiful view of that. And of course, the heat by that time it was cooler but it was also quieter up there. And I thought, nobody would believe. And it suddenly became the um, parallel reality of that first floor life is always chaotic. It's always loud. It's always full of every smell in the world. And if I step outside from my first floor and someone said to me, "You live right near a beautiful river, and where do you see the city lit up at night? It's spectacular." And I could look at them and say, "I don't live near any river because I can't see it, because I can't see it." But if I suddenly shot up, and follow me carefully here, you're in yourself. And suddenly, and we're using this as like a metaphor, right? For consciousness. And I'm sure we have all asked questions like, how can people be this way? Or how can someone choose to harm another person? Or why can't they understand this? Or we've all asked that, right? Why, why do they not have, why can't they, why isn't the light on in them, right? But now imagine you're in your lower level. You're in your lower level and you're in the first floor of your house and you've just walked off the street and you've just walked 2 miles because you couldn't get a cab and your feet are hurting like all get out and you are sweaty and it is hot and it is August and you are just ugh, and you're thirsty and you are just feeling miserable and someone says, "Oh, why don't you just come up with me?" And you zoom up to your 12th floor, symbolically speaking. Takes you right up to your penthouse. And this is inside of you. And in an instant, you are tranquilized, relaxed. You're in an altered state. You are at a state at the altar. And you're like, this, wow. Wow, and then says, "Well, but you can't stay here. You didn't earn this. You could never you can't afford this place. Come on, go on. Go back to your first floor." You would think, "Did I dream that? What did I It was too much too soon. Too much too soon. Too much of your own view of who and what you could be too fast. Too fast. It was too much of you too soon and too fast." We have to earn our own penthouse. We have to get there one floor at a time, one choice at a time. I I I deeply believe that. We just don't instantly penthouse out. It just can't happen that way. We blow our own wiring, even though we're dealing with ourselves. And I want to put it in just another explanation as to why I think that's also the case. This is a little bit more mm, science, maybe meta science. Um, and now we're going to go into my world of as a medical intuitive. And uh, there are many, many things. I mean, I am so grateful for the years that I did readings, for the years and what I learned, and how that changed my life. And once I got to um, doing basic readings, which was all about trying to figure out what was wrong with someone and helping Norm Shealy with that data, then I wrote Creation of Health, in which I identified the human energy system for the first time, and that was in the 80s. And that was really the beginning of when I realized we had power zones in us that are from the East called chakras, but that they actually existed. That we really were, we had floors in us. We had what Teresa of Avila would call mansions. We had, this was my way of identifying them. I and but how I what in writing that book, what it caused me to articulate, I don't know how to explain myself. All those readings that I did with Norm in the beginning, all those hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of readings for years and years and years and years and years, thousands really. I never thought of it as like acquiring research. They just stored somehow in my system. I just did readings and then I went about my job in a publishing company. I did not keep notes. I didn't do any of that. Can you imagine? And then when it came time to write, it all came together in this massive download. And I started to organize it, and it just organized itself. And I'm very disorganized when it comes to trying to pull all my inner threads together. And as I was writing, that's when I realized, in the writing of Creation of Health, that we are organized as a power system, and that this power, that the anatomy of our energetic system was incredibly precise, precise, and that the ingredient that we were managing was power, our power. That power was the fundamental ingredient in the human experience. And eventually, as my skills became more mature and I became more mature and developed a tremendous interest in how we use power and our capacity to create, I became fascinated with the impact every choice a human being makes upon their world. And here is, this is great, big, huge. Every choice you make upon your world. So that's a big sentence, but what fits into that sentence? Well, in doing a medical intuitive reading, I'm really looking at how you have charted the story of your relationship to power and the choices you've made and the illusions you've bought into, and how many of those illusions you're still anchored into, and how you've structured your sense of power against the world, with the world, how you experience justice, how you define justice or injustice, how you keep tabs of what has been done to you or whether you've done things to others. All of these are the choices that cause a human being to hemorrhage their power. And these are the choices that very few people pay attention to. When we talk about the power of choice, people think it means, oftentimes people think it means the power to choose big things that you can see, or the choice to say no to something, the choice to move, the choice to get married, the choice to get divorced, the choice, big, huge choices, the choice to speak up, but it's actually the choices that are much more microcosm, micro, micro in size. that I have learned are the most potent. They're the most potent. They're the ones that cause a human being to hemorrhage the most power, to leak the most power. They're the ones that cause a person to suffer the most. The chronic micro choices. And the reason this is important, there are thousands, million reasons. One of the reasons this is so important, I eventually realized as I took people into healing, as I developed my own interest in healing, is that um, and this kind of brings me into, again, the top floor of your building, getting to a place of profound imagination. But we are, I believe, living at a time that is so difficult to articulate in terms of what's actually going on one level. I have no idea about a billion, zillion, billion, zillion things. One thing I absolutely know and deeply believe, and I don't know how much impact it's having on everything, is that we are undergoing a profound transition. Profound, profound. It could be the most significant transition in the history of the human civilization itself. That's a big mouthful. The nature of that transition has everything to do with our relationship to how we understand who we are, what we are, why we're here, how we manage our the power that is inside of us, that we are made of, and how we use that power to create the experiences that we share together as a species, and that we are shifting from a whole paradigm of power, which never included the idea that we co-create reality. Never. It never included that. And I'm sure most of you grew up without being taught that, or without at least living that. But we were not taught that we were active agents of change, that we were the engineers of what is created here and within us. And so we have to have a microcosmic look at every single choice we make, how we make the choices. And we have to re-examine, redefine, reimagine what power is. We have to stop living in the first floor and crawl up the floors till we get a perspective, a level at which we can finally grapple with the truth that we are active agents of co-creation in our lives, and what that means, and how we have to live from that point on. Part of what is changing in our world, as all of us are undergoing that profound transition, is a relationship with time and space itself. Time and space itself. That I think it's funny that companies have time managers. I think that's a riot. They have to manage time. What is time? What is that? I mean, do you know that there was a time when time didn't exist? Yeah, yeah. And I mean, people were on the earth and they would, the sun rose, the sun set, but they didn't measure that experience in terms of hour by hour, what we call time. A system of order had to be applied to that. They did not live in this sense of time, that or measure their self-worth hour by hour by hour, or say things like, here's a bottle of medicine and it says I'm going to be sick for 6 weeks, take for 6 weeks and then I'll be better, which means I'm going to be sick for 6 weeks. So you the application of time was an evolution of consciousness to and the decision to want to somehow make a different order apply to the sun rising and setting, to somehow or other systematize that in an agreed upon way, so that we had noon instead of when the sun was here by you and there by me. Greenwich Mean Time. But what makes time? What exactly is it? What is it actually comprised of? Now, we're going to go to healing. And this is what I found fascinating. When I do readings, and when I did a lot of readings, how I would describe what I saw was like I saw energy coming in through the top of your head, going through you, and then I would kind of follow anchors. I'd kind of follow where you were anchored, and that's my word for it, where you were anchored, where you simply were. A different way to put it is what you magnetized in your life, where your magnetics were, where you were anchored. And I would kind of follow that. And I would follow wherever that, and then I would follow it by the kinds of images that I got. Because if you're not anchored in something, you don't generate images. Like I imagine none of you right now is sitting there anchored in images of spending the rest of your life on Easter Island. I mean, it's not going to happen. I mean, none of you are doing that. There's no emotional anchor there for any of you, I suspect. But everyone has anchors of some sort that come from the history there that is their life. And as I would review these anchors, what I was actually eventually reviewing was the amount of power they were hemorrhaging, life force, how much that just drained their life force, which is to drain their presence, the present day out of them, so that they were more in the past than in the present. They were more historic than present time. And if you look at all the spiritual masters, they tell you all the time, stay in present time. What are you doing? There is no such thing as the past. What are you doing? There's only the present moment. There's only this moment. This is a high mystical truth. There's only this moment. You have memories, yes, you have memories, but you can't live in those memories, relive those memories as if somehow or other you can, something is owed you or something shouldn't have happened. We have experiences and we have memories to put into the uh, mix of who we are today and the choices we make today. Always we go back to the power of choice, to the power of choice, the choices we make today based on the experiences we had. Yes, that's how we utilize those experiences. That's how we make the most of them, make the best of them, heal them. And what I realized was I wondered for a while why people didn't heal, and I spent a while looking at that. But then I finally wanted to know more about healing itself, about why are people afraid to heal? What is the relationship? Why do people consistently choose to not expand themselves, not expand their consciousness, not evolve when they could? To know, for example, that one of the phenomenon happening now is that we are awakening intuitively. We are more like living in a hologram of ourself, and that in that hologram, our intuitive nature, our energetic self, the light, the laws, the love, the language of organic divinity, the expression of God in our blood and bones is constantly uh, feeding intuitive guidance into us in terms of that benefits our well-being. Don't eat this, get up and walk, get moving. Don't think like that. Think like this. Da, da, da. It's constant. It is constant. It is organic and it is constant, and it is not based on whether you believe in a religion or you're an atheist, agnostic, druid, Martian. It doesn't matter. The wiring in us is organic. And this is the nature of the divine, this organic, ongoing light life force that is simply the substance of every single one of us and all life itself. And how we distribute this, the choice to keep what we think of as the past pulsating, to use our imagination to reimagine what has already happened, to reimagine what has already happened instead of to imagine what is yet to come, instead of to visualize, to allow in light, to talk to us, to move us, to motivate us, to inspire us. This was fascinating to me. Why do we do that? I came to the conclusion that it has a lot to do with consciousness, time, space, speed, perception, i.e., the floor we live on in this building. And that is every one of the anchors in your life. And we're going to explore anchors, not tonight, but we will. Every one of the anchors, however we create anchors, and Buddha would call them illusions and whatever, is like lead, like weight. WEIGHT. So think about being in present time as like vertical consciousness. Vertical. This is also the kind of consciousness that I would say is Buddha or Jesus. Just pure consciousness, pure light, pure vertical, pure this, which is why the experiences that are attributed, especially to Jesus, like instant healing, where light goes into matter like this and converts the matter of the first floor into, heals it, pulls out all the history and brings it back to the present moment and regenerates it. That's actually science. It's mystical science, but it's science. And it's what happens when light, pure light, hits matter and it regenerates, generates it anew. Okay. And so you have someone like Jesus, always in present time, Buddha in present time. This is what's called enlightenment, to be filled with light, to be filled just with light, not with matter, but with light. So the more anchors everyone has, as I realized, what an anchor does is it causes your light to descend slowly and gradually, densify, like mist becoming rain, becoming ice. It's the same substance, but it densifies and it hardens and it becomes physical. And that is ice. And that is psychic weight, WEIGHT. And that densifies in our cell tissue, it densifies our body, and it densifies the speed, our consciousness, and the speed at which we can comprehend anything. We comprehend at the speed of ice, as opposed to the speed of mist or the speed of light. We get something like that, or we have to wait until the ice moves it slowly along. And that's the difference between first floor consciousness, which is very hour by hour by hour chronos, matter based consciousness. I have to touch the ice to believe that there is ever a mist. I need to hold it in my hand, but in my hand, it becomes ice. Versus the speed of light, where what is consciousness all about? It's about getting light data, light inspiration, light guidance, and instantly responding and getting it, and not having to wait for that light, that mist, to incarnate into ice for you to believe that it exists. For you to believe that it exists. All the time, this requires time. It takes time to descend mist into water, into an ice cube tray, and then let it become ice. It takes time. Time. You are weighted down with these ice cubes, with this, instead of operating at the speed of mist, which is fast, the speed of light, which is fast, and you move swiftly, and you move rapidly, and you heal rapidly. And you're using the power of light through you and in you. And so your experience with time is more instantaneous than it is the need to add hours. And a simple example, one example that I have used several times in my class is that everybody has had the experience of being with somebody or getting your gut instinct, getting a gut hit that something's not right. Something's not right. And you've also had the follow-up gut hit, which is, and this is exactly what's not right. I can feel it. I can feel it. So you've had both. And the third part is, well, what am I going to do about that? Usually this trilogy of guidance happens in a microsecond. Something's wrong. That's what it is. Now, what do I want to do? How fast do I want to actually deal with this, and in what way? And so, as this one woman said, when she came home, she saw her kid and she knew immediately he was taking drugs, but that's not what she wanted to deal with. So she told herself he was just having problems in school. It was problems with friends. It was this or that, but she would not deal with the fact that he was a drug addict. It just, that was more than that was. So she had to come up with, she had to densify. She had to take that instant hit. That's what's wrong here. I know, I'm your mother. I can tell. I know it, but she couldn't do it. And so she had to densify. She made the choice. And here we go back to choice, the power of choice. One choice to deny what your intuition just told you. To say, no, that's not what I want to be the truth. So then you jam your circuits. You jam all your circuits. Because how can your guidance continue when you don't want to hear it, when you don't like it, when you don't want to respond to it? And so you have to go about the task, as she did, of creating an altered reality. No, that's not what he just has, I think he's got allergies. I think it's school. I think it's this. I think it's that. But what that did was it added time to what would happen, what would eventually become her moment of realization. It didn't make that not happen. It just postponed it until she could deal with it at a different time. She needed a few more years. She couldn't take it in 2 seconds, so she wanted 2 years worth of time. This is how we create a relationship with time and space. And everything in our lives has its own schedule. as amazing as that might be. And I could almost hit a pause button here. And if you were with me in this room, this is where I would want you to say, I need you to look over everything in your life. Everything. The choice, the choices you've made that have to do with your own growth and how much time you've packed into one of that. I don't want to have to change my diet for at least 5 years. I don't want to have to change this. I don't want to do that. I don't, all the things you've packed in, how much you've packed in to the choice of, I really don't want to reconcile this relationship. So I give it a few more years. We pack time into everything. Could be done right away, doesn't have to, but I think I'll wait a few years. I think we pack time into everything. We have timers. We have timers. Now, one of the things about our buildings is that as we go up in each floor to see the world differently, we go from our personal world to the world, to the collective, to how we are co-creating the world that we share together. Because you can see it better, you can perceive it, you can see with a little more clarity once you get to the penthouse and out of your own way. Once you get and out of your own agenda. On the lower level, you're living your life for your agenda, for your agenda. But once you get out of yourself and you're simply trying to understand how life works and how the laws work and the power of choice and what's in light and the power and how the laws work. Once you're just into the mechanism of the divine, the mechanics of God, just the mechanics, that's all. The mechanics of how the system works, like mathematics, that's all. Once you're at that level and you are impersonal about yourself, you're able to grapple with the impact your personal choices have on what's created in the whole. You are, because you're not in the business of excusing your personal choices, you are actually able to see that every choice I make is in fact attached to 1,000 million people, and there's just no two ways about it. When you're down on the ground and you're living in a place and people say, we have to ration water because we're in a drought. And people don't do it because they think, well, someone else can do it. I'm not going to do it because they're on the first floor. And they excuse themselves and they make power choices like that. No one's going to tell me what to do. And I'm just going to do this. When you get up to this level, where you're no longer in the business of acquiring power on the earth plane for yourself, you simply want to understand how one choice impacted all the others, how the inability to cooperate with a drought impacted the whole, and then you can see it. That your one choice to not participate, to see yourself as an exception, was in fact the choice to put the psychic force into exceptionalism, as opposed to what life is about, which is holism, and all life breathes together. So it was shattering one of the basic laws of nature, breaking one of the basic laws. And you can get that from up here, but if someone were to talk to you on the first floor, you wouldn't get it when you had a hose in your hand. There's so many of these choices, so much about choice, about the speed of consciousness, about what this moment's about. But I really want to just stand back and just sit everyone down and say, I have to get this in tonight because it won't, it's the time that I I deeply believe it's one thing there aren't words to communicate the significance of what it means to be to say, well, we're at a turning point in humanity. And it's like, well, yeah, all right, now that's fine. Yeah. No, 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 no. We are in the age of the unthinkable. We're not just at a turning point. It's unthinkable that we could have a nuclear war, but you know what? Actually, it's not. It's not. And every single human being who chooses to believe that it's simply not going to happen because bad things like that won't happen because they've never happened since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so it's not going to happen again. No, no. What consciousness is about recognizing this could happen. And so, how do I use everything I have inside of me to become an agent of light so that the worst possible scenarios don't happen? Because we wouldn't be looking at them if there wasn't a possibility that they could happen. I believe deeply that the reason we're at this turning point, the reason I'm teaching what I'm teaching, the reason it's so vitally important to get to empower you to pay attention to every choice you make, to realize there isn't one thing you do that doesn't count in this world, and to get out of the first floor where you think that in order to be important you have to be rich or big, a billionaire, blah 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 blah. No, a conscious human being is more powerful than a frightened billionaire. I promise you that right now, right now, right now. That what you can do, what each person can do by choosing to decide, I'm not going to let lies influence, I need to become discerning. I'm not going to respond to lies, and I'm not going to respond to hatred and panic as it rises each moment and each day from all the forces that are getting redistributed on the planet. Ukraine will not be producing the food it has traditionally produced. It has always produced the grain that has fed Africa, the the sunflowers that have made for sunflower oil, that has made for baby food, all the things that are going to change. This isn't just inflation. This is the shifting dynamics of power on the planet. Putin is threatening Finland. Again, the unthinkable. Do we think that they're going to go across Finland's 800 border with Russia? It's unthinkable. But what else is unthinkable? What else is unthinkable? The power you have to make a difference is unthinkable. You've I don't know many people who take that part of themselves seriously. They but you have to, we have to. When we entered the nuclear age, this is my way of describing the urgency. I think what happened, and now I want you to come up with me to your penthouse. This is the place where you have to listen to me story tell to you, to speak in myths and speak in mythologies and speak in stories. And you have to hear it not just as you, but hear it in your soul. Hear it from as if you could view the whole world from an impersonal place, from the position that I am temporarily alive. I'm not going to be here in 40 years. I'm going to be gone. I may not be here in 30 years, maybe a good 20, and that's it. I'm off this planet. And I am speaking about me. So I, we have to just view this as this is my time right here, and then I'm gone. And that's how we look at this. Just take a view from and I want to learn what I can do that contributes the most to this, not takes the most, contributes the most. because this is the ongoing experience of the human being. So why are all these changes happening? If you were in your first floor, it'd be very easy to say, oh, look, there's bad Russia, there's good Ukraine, there's bad this, bad that person, good this person, bad this person. You'll never get anything straight. Never get anything straight. It would be equal to me or to anybody in the healing arts saying to you, um, walking in on the day that you were the sickest and never asking to understand anything about your dreams and what you were thinking and what you were feeling and all your potential and what is left unsaid and all the whole of you that needs to be brought to bear in order to put you back together, in order to heal, in order to understand your suffering. I need your whole story. I don't need to walk in and see in a moment who you were angry at that day. That doesn't help me. That doesn't help you. In order for me to understand the whole of your light, the whole of your power, all the choices you make, I need the widest, biggest, hugest, archetypal, big, huge, dynamic view, vantage of you I can get. That's how big and powerful you are. And from that is also how we need to understand this moment in time and what is unfolding. So I'm asking you to come up and I want you to sit back as though you were watching this storyteller and say, one of the forces that runs us is our mythologies. We all have stories. We all, and by mythology is actually a God story. It's actually a belief in God or not a belief in God. And that's a mythology. Anything that has to do with the power of the cosmos, that orders and structures the cosmos, qualifies as myth. It's a myth. But what a myth is really was human beings' attempt to structure all this power and make sense of it, to give it a narrative that it could fit into. Like, this is how this power works. The power of Athena works this way because there's a vein of God that works that way. And there's a vein of there's a the veins of God. We needed to understand how this force of creation works with us. And another way to put this, we wanted to understand, human beings wanted to understand the laws, the rules of the game here. How is this structure? What happens if we do? Will we get flooded out if we don't behave? What will happen? What will happen? One of the great myths, Prometheus. Prometheus. And he goes and he steals the fire from Zeus. And Zeus says, And of course, the story includes Epimetheus' brother and all this, but we're just going to cut to the chase and say that that Zeus, in order to get even with Prometheus, said to the goddesses, make me a goddess. Make her real pretty, make her this, make her seductive, make her that. But most of all, make her curious. And we'll call her Pandora. And when Epimetheus, Prometheus' brother, got married, Zeus sent Pandora with a gift, sent a god to Pandora. When he married Pandora, he sent a gift. And of course, Prometheus warned his brother, don't trust any gift from the gods. But Pandora was given a box, some say a jar, whatever, with the instructions, don't open it. Don't open it. It was punishment for having stole the fire. Of course, and everyone knows when she opened it, it was when Zeus released onto the world all the suffering, all the horror that would plague humanity. But at the bottom of Pandora's box was the word hope. What am I telling you this for? Because I think myths repeat themselves. Myths are stories of power. They're stories of how the human psyche evolves with power and struggles with power and struggles and the struggle is ongoing. It's eternal. It is always in present time. It is always in present time. It never stops. There will never be an end to people with power plays. There will never be an end to jealousy. There will never be an end to generosity. This is never going to stop. So our stories are immortal. And so when we discovered nuclear power and created thermonuclear weapons to destroy life on our planet, the only planet we're living on, the only planet we have, this living being called Earth. We stole the fire once again. We stole the fire. We stole nuclear fire. We stole the code, how to split the atom, how to work. We entered the age of energy with the intention to kill, to use weaponry. And I think the heavens thought, So the way heaven works, to the best of my capacity to describe it, is you're not going to get like visions and gargoyles and no. But organic dynamics shift because God is in all things. The nature of the divine is that, and I'm not talking about an off-planet God. I'm not talking about the divine has no religion. We have religions. I'm talking about the life force, the light force. I'm talking about light. I'm talking about law. I'm talking about this life force. I think we necessitated our own evolution, our own accelerated growth. I think by virtue of the fact that we developed weapons that could do so much destruction and nothing positive with them. And we did not comprehend how horrible it was. It was all right. We're celebrating. Look at this. Look at the weapons. Look how many people we could kill. We could kill even more. That somehow or other, we've necessitated our own evolution, that we had to accelerate our growth. We had to accelerate our own inner awakening, that we couldn't anymore live as human beings with this idea that the outside world was coming toward us. We had to awaken our inside world and realize, whoa, we're the ones creating the outside world. It's not coming at us, it's coming from us, from us, from us. And so long as any one of us does war in our personal lives, we are participating in the dynamic of war. And that gives psychic free radicals that create war. It's a choice to use your life force in that way. That's another choice. What we will talk about is what is in one is in the whole. What is in one is in the whole. How the laws work. And that by understanding the power you have and the power that's in every choice, and that every choice you have is attached to the other choices and to those consequences. I I stopped doing readings because eventually I realized in my own small, tiny, itsy bitsy way how intimate every choice was, how it no choice had a real endpoint to it. No choice actually came to a point of closure. It just continued to spin off consequences. And I thought that is true because energy is never, it can't be, you can't uncreate energy. You just can't uncreate energy. Thus we have karma. Thus, if we make choices that are negative to the whole, we're going to have to go and make choices to offset that. And that's the law of nature. That's the law of balance. That's the nature of the divine. Just another choice is given, another chance. In this time, I think that we are at a critical turning point where we need to live the truths we know. It's not enough to know them. It is not enough. We actually have to live the truths we know. We actually have to move up to a level of in ourselves and actually stay there. Lock in and stay there and start living the truths we know. It's not enough to say, "Oh, I know I should eat better." No, no more. It's not enough to say I should forgive. No. At this point, it's time for us to participate in in becoming congruent human beings. That in fact, the truths we know are the truths we live. We cannot expect a planet of honesty if that's not what our contribution is. If that's not what our contribution is, we cannot expect a community with integrous people if that's not what our contribution is. But with every one person who makes choices from the light, with an understanding of how the laws work, then the power of that participates in the transformation toward a light filled earth. I think that is what makes this time so rare, so extraordinary, and it makes it so essential that that um, people get this, that you really matter. And I'm going to circle back to what one of the things I brought up when we first started this tonight, and that's that I said what makes a class really valuable, aside from my teaching, of course, but is that you are examining your own choices along the way, that you are looking at how it is you make choices. For what reason did you do what you do? How do I make the choices I make? Why do I make them? What is my agenda? What is my what do I hope to accomplish with this? How do I see my reality? And if I could access a higher reality on this, and there's always a higher reality, why would I choose not to? Why would I choose not to? And so with that, I would what this is where this is where I miss the classroom. I really miss the classroom when because I love a question like, if why would anybody not want to pursue the highest, the most you could know about yourself, the most you could know about the universe? Why would you not? But I'm reminded of that one man, and I was lecturing in Ireland, and I was talking about why forgiveness is essential to healing as a mystical act, as the first actually self-igniting mystical act to forgive someone, because it doesn't make any sense and it's not rational, and so you're not doing it for them, you're doing it because of how you want to manage your power. It's a choice to manage your power very differently. And he got it, and then he stood up and he said, "Stop, I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to hear any more about this. I need to get out of here." And then he explained, he said, "I live with people who are cruel and they're angry. They're my family," he said, "but I live with them." And he said, and I what you're saying is the truth. This is what forgiveness is all about. This is it. But I need, in order for me to survive with them, I still need my anger. Because if I become the one that's always forgiving, because I know the power of forgiveness, they just take advantage of it and they take advantage of me. And I can't let that happen. And and so he was at this crossroads where, and he taught me a great deal, that the more a person chooses to utilize their light, the less you have what you think is control over the consequences of the choices you make, which is something we'll talk about um, tomorrow, and I mean the next class. That as you move up in the in yourself, the the data that you use to make, like if you're making a choice to buy a home, you look at the real estate appraisal and you look at the price of the house, you look at the neighborhood, you know what data you look at. It's hardcore data. But eventually, when you look at other the higher you go in yourself, the more you relinquish this data to, it's not that you don't refer to it, but it's not the only data that you use. It's not the only data. You pull data that is more vertical, more from the world of timelessness, more from the world of in- energetic, more from the world of light. You pull light data and you try to maneuver it with matter data. It's not an easy thing to do. It's timelessness and time. And that's what he reached a place where his understanding of the timeless power of forgiveness and how it would allow him to understand them at speeds like this. And he didn't want that. He didn't want to be that compassionate so that he would get to compassion in 5 minutes and it would take them 5 weeks. He didn't want that. He felt that he wasn't strong enough, but I knew it was too late. He'd already crossed that Rubicon. You know, I've read a lot of writings by mystics and from all traditions. One of the points that they all make, this is why I love that literature so much. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. I love it. One of the points they make is how painful the inner awakening is. And it gets a lot of bad press, I have to say. It really does. But there's just a middle couple of floors in the building that have this kind of painful stuff where you're half on the earth and half above. And it's that the human ego in us has to be reshaped to handle the speed of light. It has to be expanded to understand how invisible laws work. And in order to work with the power that you have, that that you cannot want earth justice and light justice at the same time. You cannot have a love of power and think that you can utilize the power of love. It's one or the other. It's one or the other. And in that in between shift is where the pain is played out because you know that you're capable of making a choice that actually has power, but the outcome, what we have to relinquish is our capacity to determine outcomes, our capacity to see the stories play out the way we want to. That's what the love of power is all about. That's how the choices that we make in the first world that cost us so much, including our health, is because we we want to see the law work for us instead of the law work. We want to maneuver love instead of watching cosmic love do its thing. And we think energy is fuel instead of the life force and the light force. There's so much to it. I am so glad you're with me. So I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to ask you to pay it between now and our next session to pay attention to your choices. And mostly I want you to pay attention to why you make the choices you do. Pay attention to yourself. Observe yourself. Go into the observational mode, because that it's yeah. So because the subject, in the title, one of them is love, I've chosen this prayer, the way of the heart. My prayer today, Lord, is to refine my awareness of the needs of others in my life. I may not be able to respond to everyone with words or actions, but I can respond with prayer and grace. I know when I'm inadvertently sensing the energy field of another person, I've become a finely tuned instrument now. So have all of you. What I did not anticipate years ago when I followed the call to do intuitive readings was that all inner roads inevitably lead to love. It's not personal love that I feel. In fact, Lord, you've given me the grace of an impersonal heart, something that would have terrified me if I knew when I was a young woman. But I've learned with utter amazement that there's nothing but room in this heart. Some people have slipped in who've never would have gotten into that smaller heart of mine ever. And funny that. Love is an astonishing force. It never runs out, and love doesn't require a person. I can just dwell on love and it starts flowing. I don't know where or to whom, but the sensation is utterly extraordinary. Love is a mighty force. Perhaps it is because that is the name we have given to your light. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you for session 2 next. Blessings.